Well, hello. Making introductions is very hard. This is my fourth attempt, and I'm not joking. Well, anyway, I'm going to be talking about this story since it is February. It is the month of love and whatnot, and this is one of probably the lesser known stories of Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. He is also the author most well known for the stories of Sherlock Holmes, and in this kind of collection of short stories that have to do with the horror of, well, the genres of terror and horror. There is one that kind of draws my attention, and it is called the Japan Box. Despite being within a collection of horror stories, and it's not just horror, and I think I just said terror and horror. No, it's horror and mystery. Tales of Horror and Mystery. That's the name of the collection. But I don't know if this is what they were classifying as horror or classifying as mystery. But the Japan box is about, it's a narration done by somebody who is from his perspective, and he is, at that time, they call them the governors. It basically they were tutors. They're in-home tutors, so they would go to rich homes and become teachers to the children in that home. And he was going to teach the two younger boys of this one man, and he already had another uh, tutor for his little girl. So just to give that into perspective, and in his narration, he gives his account an of a couple of incidents that happened in this home. Now, this takes place in England, as you would guess, and it's in the Midlands. I am not sure like which location specifically, but it's one of those regions where, well, obviously, there's a lot of castles and small towns. And this man, Sir John Bollamore, he is probably the richest man in town. When our when our narrator, the protagonist, well, he's more of a narrator, but when he comes into the story, he reaches the town and starts teaching the two younger boys. And not just that, but he immediately notices that while Sir John Bollamore, the master of the house, he is not necessarily warm, and he's not necessarily the more charismatic. He There is something about him. That's not to say that he was rude or anything else, but he was courteous, and he did what was needed to be done, and he did care for the children in his way. But it wasn't a warm or very, there wasn't that much warmth to him. The way he described it is that his eyes were pathetic in the way that there was sadness, but at the same time, his demeanor was a strong one, kind of inviting somebody to dare show sympathy for him. That sort of situation. You might be asking, what happened to the wife, the mother of the children? Well, 3 years earlier, his wife died. So, effectively, he's a widow, or widower, we should say. And as the days go on and as time passes, one of the things that he notices is that there is a particular room that nobody's allowed to go in, except for this one older lady who is just supposed to clean the room. But other than that, all rooms are available except for that one room. And one day, as it so happens, there is an accident that happens. Somebody falls into the water, they can't swim. Our narrator goes in, rescues them, and that is when Sir John Bollamore, he hears the commotion. He opens the door to his study, which is that one room that nobody can go into, and he invites our narrator to come in and tell him what happened. So he lets him know somebody fell in the water. Egg went in. That's when soaked. And from then on, he gains the confidence of Sir John Bollamore. Now, as time passes, there's also these strange rumors. Rumors about who Sir John Bollamore used to be. And there's also rumors about what is going on in this. I really don't understand if it's a castle or if it's a home. It's somewhere around those lines between a mansion and a castle. But there is a rumor that in Sir John Bollamore's study, there are voices that can be heard late at night. Late in terms of maybe at around 10. And not just that, but they're voices of a woman. And so there are certain things that are kind of eerie because nobody sees anyone go in or out except John Bollamore. And so the rumors do border on the supernatural. Now, there is an incident that happens, another incident where in the study, a beam falls down and they have to clear the room. And one of the things that is taken and moved to it's more of a private library. So one of the things that they move out of the study and into the library is this small black box, a Japan box. I had to really look that up just to make sure what that meant, and it's just a Japanese inspired box, or at least the decoration, the design it has. But what ends up happening is that the other lady who is supposed to be cleaning the study, the one room that nobody goes into, well, obviously she now has to go into the library, which is now locked, but she opens the library, she's cleaning, and because she grabs this box, the black box, not to say to open it or anything, just she grabs it, Sir John Bollamore loses his temper. His reaction is of outrage, and what ends up happening, he fires this old lady, and as she leaves, our narrator sort of catches up and overhears her talking to the I'm not really sure about her title, but she is in charge of kind of monitoring and supervising what has to be done in the house or palace. Or ever since the incident where somebody fell into the water, the narrator had gained a certain level of trust with Sir John Bollamore, and part of that trust had been being invited into the library. This was before the box was brought in to do an index to sort through the books and make sure they're in order. Apparently, it's a big private library, and what ends up happening is that one day he is walking with this. As I said before, there is another woman who is teaching the younger girl, and they do hear these voices. The fact is, now he was also kind of curious. He wasn't going to be spying on his own, but he had also been curious. It so happens that one day he was in the library, he was sleeping, and he had taken it's called chlorodyne, which is an opiate. It's an old opiate that was patented in London, and I'm talking about the 1800s. And they never specify what our narrator is taking this for, but usually it's just taken for pain. So it could have been for, as an actual effect of maybe, I don't know, shingles or cholera or anything that might have caused intense pain. But as a side effect, he was drowsy, he fell asleep, and that's when this big incident happens, which is he wakes up to Sir John Bollamore having coming in. He locked the door to the library. He opened the box, this small Japanese inspired box, and brings out a smaller device. And out of this device comes the voices that people have been talking about, and with the voices, the same voice that he had heard. And not just that, he was tempted of saying, "Hey, I caught you," or somewhere around those lines. Then this happens. The voice that comes out of the box is, as I said, a woman's voice, but it's interesting what she is saying, because it goes around the lines of, "You're not alone. I'm glad that you'll be hearing me twice a day. Stay strong. Don't go back to your vices." When it ends, Sir John Bollamore notices that he's not alone. He catches that the narrator is also in the library, and halfway confronts him. I say halfway because, while he is angry, he is upset that the narrator was there. What he thought he was spying, but the narrator did have a chance to explain himself, saying, "Oh well, I had taken pain medication and I fell asleep and I didn't wake up until right now." And that's when the Sir John Bollamore relaxes and is sad. From mad, he goes down to sad, and effectively, he just tells him, "Well, since you already know part of my secret, you might as well know the whole story." And that's when he tells him what is really going on. And the facts of the matter is that Sir John Bollamore, in his younger days, I think at the time that he was telling this story was 55, but in his younger days, he had been left to travel alone to this one town where he's at. He effectively spent all his money on alcohol, on drugs, and what made the spending a lot more quicker was that there was many people that pretended to be his allies, his friends, and he spent the money on them for alcohol and drugs. And once the money went away, he was alone. Not just that, but he was known as the drunkard, the person who, the drug addict, the one who is always on fights, that sort of thing. So not a good reputation. However, for some strange reason, this young woman took an interest to him. And I say young, but they might as well have been the same age or around the same age. I'm not saying that she was like much younger, but they just say it's a young woman fell for him in a way and changed his life. And not in the sense that she provided money and then she bought him his way out of it. None of that. The way it is described is that she helped him get over his vices, get over his alcoholism, his drug addiction, kind of clean himself out, get a job, make his own money, become his own person, to where he is today. And it worked. Then they lived a pretty happy life up until she got sick. And when she got sick, I'm guessing it might have to do with, they don't really say, but judging by those times, it could have been breast cancer or anything similar, because there was nothing to be done. And one of the things that she did is, rather than spending the time looking for doctors elsewhere, doctors from America or Germany, or going far and wide in search of a magic cure, she did her own research and found that in London there was a new device, what they called a phonograph. And to give a little bit more context about these times, recording and basically reproducing sound, even though it wasn't like a new thing, it wasn't something that was done. So it wasn't usual for people to be recording music or recording themselves and then playing it for other people to listen to. It wasn't that much of a thing like we do today with our own phones, right? I know that was kind of quick, but it wasn't that much of a thing. So it was a novelty to have had this small box rather than the gramophone, which is huge and then it has like the where the sound is coming out, which is humongous. We are talking about a small device where she recorded herself for him to listen to twice a day. And indeed, he has. He would get up in the morning, listen to her voice, and then spend the rest of the day almost in solitude. At night, he would listen to the recording again. And with this, he had been keeping to his word. No drop of alcohol, actually, no alcohol in the house, even. He hadn't used any drugs ever again. And he was basically keeping himself clean and respectable. And again, he wasn't that warm of a person, but he was trying his best for his children. And so the story ends with him saying, well, this is my story. I just ask you to not tell it until after I die, but I'll leave that up to you. I'll leave it to your own discretion. And the one thing that gets me thinking is how different this is compared to the more romanticized stories such as Romeo and Juliet. You have, the story of effectively this young adult, or not young adult, this adult, because I think Romeo was like 19 years, and this pre or barely beginning her pubescence. This girl who might have been like 13, 14 years of age. Romeo being infatuated with somebody else, even at the beginning of the story, and then when he sees Juliet, he's okay, I'm no longer infatuated with this other girl, now I'm infatuated with her. And basically manipulates her to kind of fall in love with him, and then effectively grooming this young girl. And then not just that, but killing her cousin, and then, or they killed his cousin. And then they go ahead and get themselves killed. I mean, that is not... People hold that story as, oh, this is true love, and this is what love truly is. And that is not the case. I mean, I wouldn't call that true love. I would just call that was a mess that could have been avoided. But, I mean, it's a story that's still known today, so it worked somehow. But again, the contrast that I see with this story is that with Romeo and Juliet, you do have somebody who clearly has the power and is manipulating the other person into getting into the relationship and kind of falling for them. However, you have this other situation in the Japan box where one person was in a very low place, in a very, very dark place, but they were made better. Once they met this other person, they weren't just being manipulated into doing something. They were actually being encouraged to be better, to do better. And, that really brought that person from being the drug addict to the respectable businessman. Whereas with the Romeo and Juliet, you just have an adult that was grooming a younger child and then got themselves killed and had part of the family from both sides killed as well. So that was a mess. With the Japan box, it was different. And that is one of the things that catches my attention the most, where it's not classified as a love story, but in a way, shouldn't love be that? Shouldn't love be a motivator or a key thing that is used to make the other person want to be better and do better? And not just one way around, but also the other way. where the other person will also try to motivate for that person to want to do and be better. So love is kind of like a mutual thing. One person picks up the other, who picks up the other, and the other, and so forth. And not just that, they're companions in life. And a companion is going to be on equal terms as you, not hold all the power. And that's what I don't see with Romeo and Juliet. Now, I don't know what for you is the greatest love story, or not even the greatest, but what is for you the best love story for you, in your opinion? Feel free to leave a comment. Feel free to just say what you need to say. I know that Valentine's is all about the romance and the flowers and the chocolates. It's much more than that. Don't just feel obligated to, oh, I need to get a date, or I need to do online dating, or I need to do this or that. I mean, there's many forms of love. You have love of a partner, as an intimate partner. You have love of friends, of your family, a pet. I mean, there's different forms of love. So appreciate those that you have, those that are in your life, and even those that might have already passed away. Remember them, because in the end, what is love? I don't know. You tell me. All right. Take care.